Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And I thought we'd create a little card, and this time I want to use this floral here, and it's TE54. So we'll just pull that stamp set out. There we go. Let's place that over somewhere. I've got my 4x6" piece of card. I have my small 3x5" gel press, and I've got Lindy's Mystic Crystal Teal, and I've got my mini oxides. I'm bound to have forgotten something, but there you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gel press. I love this little size. It's just perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some colours. So first of all, I'm going to start with Cracked Pistachio. Let's move this up so you can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use Cracked Pistachio, and then I'm going to add the Cracked Pistachio, and I'm just going to add this randomly over my gel press. Then I'm going to use, let's use a little bit of peacock feathers. So quite random, not thinking about it too much. So that was Cracked Pistachio, peacock feathers. Then I'll just keep faffing. Then we'll have Twisted Citron, and we'll have a little bit of Salty Ocean, and then a little bit of Rustic Wilderness. I do love the Rustic Wilderness, and I've got squares on there because this is little squares, but hopefully when I add some moisture that won't matter at all. So I'm going to grab a little paint palette, or actually no, I've got a little dish somewhere. No, don't wet that, Tracy. Do you like how I go yes, no, yes, no? So I've got a little palette. It's only a plastic one. I'm going to open the Lindy's Mystic Crystal Teal. I love these little lids because it's just, she says as she pulls the whole thing off. There we go. So now I can place some of this in here, and I can actually leave this in here if I wish, and then just reactivate it. Water. Let's grab some water. Look at that colour. And it's got shimmer in there. So if that dries, you can reactivate that. Now this is, I knew somebody would knock on the door. Bear with me a second. I do apologise. Oh, it's okay. My husband's going to the door. He's also got a call as well, so. Just add a little bit more. There we go. Can you see the colours in there? What was it, Ian?
Something right on that.
Oh well. So excuse me, as typical in the Evans household, when we both try to do something, somebody knocks on the door, but that's standard practice. So let me lift this up. Look at the colours in that. Can you see the colours? Just lovely. So I'm then going to pick up my fan brush and just saturate that with the colour, and then I'm just going to add this to my gel press. So I've got a reasonable amount of moisture on there. Let's move that out of the way. And what I love when I love using the inks on the gel press, because there's none of this rushing to take a print. So it's wonderful. I can lift this up. I can just take my time. And I'm just cleaning that because we've just got a few little splashes. And can you see you've got those beads of ink on there? And then I'm just going to take plain water. There's not much in there, Tracy. Just take some plain water, and I'm just going to add a few little splatters of water as well. There we go. And yes, I'll clean up again because I decided to do that all of a sudden. And I love that I can just take my time. You can add this gel press to an acrylic block if you wish. If that makes it a little bit easier to handle your gel press, but because it's such a small size, it's not too cumbersome and it's easy to work with. So you can see we've got lovely, wonderful colour palette there. Now you could quite easily leave it like that. You can press it like I'm doing and the colour will move and merge. It's up to you if you don't do that and you leave more white areas. And that's blended nicely. And if I've got a little bit of an area, it's got a line, I'll worry about that afterwards. Now what I don't want to do is pick that up too soon and then it all goes into the centre of the gel press. What you want to do is you want to allow that colour just to absorb onto the card and not move as much. Those colours are just wonderful, wonderful colours. Let's just force a little bit more moisture down there. So can you see, I can still move that. It's like a squishy jelly. You can still move that. So because you can still move it, that means that if I lift it up, it will all move to the centre. Some lovely sort of blues in there, turquoisey colours, just wonderful. So just give that a little bit of time. Just test it and see how much that water squishes. So I'm just giving that a little bit more, a little bit longer. It's just about patience. And I'm going to use this floral, which will look lovely on here. I think that will look really nice. Just in its own right. You don't have to have too much of anything on there if you don't want, but doesn't that look gorgeous just against those greens, etc. How much are we moving now? See, now I can see I'm moving a little bit less now. I'm not moving as much. But if I lift this, you can see. Can you see there? It's moving. And if I lift this up, you can see it's all moving to the centre. So just have a little bit of patience, just so that you keep some of that colour where you've placed it. So you just have to have a little bit of patience. And that's what we've got plenty of. There is no rush. Oh, the sun's actually shining, which is the first time all day today that we've had that. So I'm going to lift this off now. There we go. Look at that. Look at those colours. You've also got, I can't pick this up. You've also got your gel press there that's also still got some colour on. So just spritz it with a bit of water and see if there's anything on there. And if there's anything on there, then you end up with a print, a toofy. So just leave that a few moments just to do its thing. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to bring in my little ink pads, which have already got white splatters all over there. And I'm going to take the Salty Ocean again. Going to add that salty ocean to that. Then I'm going to take, I've not cleaned my brush. I'm just going to pick that up and I'm just going to tap some of the Salty Ocean just into my card. The colours are just sensational. And also, if I've got any of these Lindy's left, well, let's pick that up. And we'll just add that to our card as well. There we go. I've got some plain water somewhere. Let's just leave that. Let's clean our area up. Just so that we don't have too many bits and pieces just lying around. We'll just bring this in the 2nd generation print and we'll see what we've got on there. And you can see you've got a lovely print that you could use and add to, etc., to create another card quite easily. But let me just lift this up. Look at the colours in that. Just delicious, absolutely delicious, just gorgeous. You can also spritz with water because you're using the oxide, so you can just add a little bit more water if you want, just so that it gives a little bit more texture to your design. There we go. So let's now give this a dry, and I've not got my heat tool out. There we go. So I'm going to give this a dry. Now, if you let this dry naturally, your card will stay quite flat. You won't get any sort of bubbling or, I mean, this card takes the moisture quite well. So I'm just going to dry this because I want to stamp on top of this. And if I wait for it to dry naturally, you're going to be here a heck of a long time. And there's quite a bit of moisture on there. And I held my heat tool up a little bit just so that it didn't move the ink, because I quite like where all the ink is without it being moved. And I've not bleached out the ink by dabbing it with kitchen towel. I've just allowed it to do its thing, to oxidise. Got a bit of just wet water here that we don't need. And we've got a delicious background there. Absolutely gorgeous. It's still got some wetness here. Let's make sure that that is dry. And what gorgeous, gorgeous colours and texture that it's got on there. That is just wonderful. You can test it's dry by using your hand. It's the easiest way. So I'm then going to take my floral. And then I'm going to take my opaque pigment Glacier White. Do you know, look at me. I've lifted that up because I thought the lid was on there. It's inside. So my stamp's quite clean, so I'm not worried about my white ink pad. Make sure you've not just used your stamp literally 30 seconds ago with black ink. So just make sure you haven't used it with black ink like seconds ago, because you'll just stain all your white ink pad. So where do you want that, Tracy? Around about, do you like how I and ah? And I do this every time. I and ah over where everything's going. So I'm just going to allow that just to sit on the surface a short while. And it's a nice pigment ink. And I don't think I've even got an impression on there. So let me grab let me just, it'll be because the area is, it's not dark enough, it's quite light, so I'll have to pick a lighter colour. So we'll try again. So the white, in other words, the background's not super dark, and I've got an open area here, so I literally can't see anything. Not a thing. I bet if I use my embossing powder I could. Right. So I'm going to use, what colour are you going to use, Tracy? I don't want too dark a colour. Let's try cracked pistachio. I don't want too dark a colour, but the white's like non-existent. I need it a little bit darker than that. So this is the crack. This might not show either because obviously the cracked pistachio is in the background. There you go. So I've got sort of a shadow effect, which is what I want in the background. Just a little bit of a shadow effect. Let's grab some, I've got any copy paper here. I'll lift this up so that you can see. So I'm then going to take the cracked pistachio again. And I'm just adding layers of the image in the background. That's what I'm doing, but I didn't want it too dark. The white was a little, you know, non-existent. So let's just add. There we go. Let me lift this up so you can see that we've got pale images in the background. That's what I wanted, just in the background. So that colour we've used in the background, the cracked pistachio. Then we're going to use the Rustic Wilderness. So let's use the Rustic Wilderness. Leave that copy of paper. So we'll take the Rustic Wilderness. And this is obviously a colour, the next colour darker in shade. I didn't say that when I did these videos that I would be able to communicate. So then I'm going to add a darker one. So this will be even darker. There you go. So the darker one pushes the very pale ones into the background. So let's have these again. So we're going to take that Rustic Wilderness again. Does take me ages to decide on the placement. we go. So I've now added these dark ones again. Okay, so you've got your dark ones, you've got your light ones that you can just see vaguely in the background. So just clean that again. So you can see I'm layering this. And then I've got another green, about pine needles. So then I'm going to use pine needles. In other words, I'm just having too much fun. So we're going to take pine needles. Let's take the pine needles. And just spend a little bit of time deciding where you would like things. So just take your time, just decide on your layering. So this is my background. So I'm just creating a background, just lovely. So I'm just simply creating a background. And what I'm going to do, I'm then going to try my, which one you're going to use? White paint. Now, if you haven't got a nice white, an opaque white paint, you could use maybe your white watercolour. Now, I know I left a piece of cut and dry foam here, but of course, now I can't see it. It's nowhere to be seen, so bear with me. So use any sponge that you want, but use a, you know, a nice, good quality white, an opaque white or a watercolour, because you can put watercolour straight onto here, no problem at all. You can use a bit of dishwasher sponge, car sponge, whatever sponge you've got to hand. And I'm going to, do you know, I know what I didn't do. I'm going to just take this off because I made a mistake there. And I'll tell you why. Did you see how blobby it was? Because you should work it into your sponge first. You should work that paint in, doesn't matter whether it's car sponge, a dishwasher sponge, you work it in. So then you've got it like an ink pad. Not quite so gloopy. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the white on the top. Now with your white, because this is a paint, you don't want to leave that on there too long. And even that, look, it picks up the green, and even that isn't very dark. Let's see if I can add a little bit more paint. So I'm adding the paint a little bit thicker. And see if I can add it a little bit thicker. Now, if you don't like experimenting, why don't you use your stamping platform? Look, can you see? And that's, you know why that is, don't you? Because the Distress Oxide is going to react with anything that's wet, okay? So let's just clean this up. So let's pick this up. So I'm just going to just clean my stamp because it's absolutely covered in white paint. And it's only because I'm putting it directly on the top and it's just picking up the green ink from here because this is wet. So we won't go with the white. What I could do is use my Distress. Let me go and grab that. Can you see how I'm experimenting to see what I have? So if I take my, let's give this a little bit of a dry. Has that got texture of paint on there? Yeah, that's paint. So if I take a little bit of Distress glaze, I've ordered some more of this. If you use the Distress glaze, you don't really need much. If you use a little bit of the Distress glaze, that will stop any of the distress moving. There we go. So that'll stop any of the distress moving. So let's take a wipe. Just wipe my fingers. And I just like to dab just so that it's not, the distress glaze is not sort of soaked on there. Okay, so the reason I want some fresh white now, so let's add the fresh white, because I didn't want any of the green that is in there. Work that white into your cut and dry foam, a sponge, whatever you've got. Don't go straight on, work with it. And what I'm going to do is spritz lightly with water. Now don't forget, it reacted quite a lot to the green. So just remember that. So now I can see the shadow of the white. It just adds, obviously I can add more layers, but I don't want that. I'm just creating a background. Now, if you don't want to, you don't have to add the white. Also, you don't have to have the glaze. You can, obviously, if you try to stamp in the white like I've done, what you end up with is that picking up the green. That's why I like the distress glaze. Some more of that is on the way. But you can still create this without adding the white if you wish. Now, why did we add water to the floral, you may be asking? And the reason we add the tiniest bit of moisture is so that, let's bring this down here, is so that your white does not, I don't want it right on top, does not stick to the card. So there's certain things that you can learn from this, and that is that if you use the Distress Glaze, that will stop the oxide from, can you see I've got the little bit of white on there as well, just so you can see that. It's all textural, it's just a background. So if you've got a white image in the background with your white watercolours or whatever, that's absolutely fine. Can you see how many times I've gone over? So ask yourself, what if? So let's clean this again. So I'm creating a background and I'm not concerned at all. So let's just clean this, dry this, sorry, not clean this. I've got clean in the brain. And it doesn't matter because this is a background. I'm creating a background, so it doesn't matter, you know, that you've just, like now I've got those shadows of those florals. Now, let's try. Let's grab it. So you can see I'm having a play. And that's what we need to do sometimes when we're buying products. So what I'm going to get now is my Gansai Tambi watercolour. And there's a white in here. So what I'm going to do is grab a brush. What brush you're going to grab? Let's spritz this with water. Now, with this paint, you can have it quite watery, or you can have it so that it's a nice, rich, thick paint. So it can be quite watery, like so. Can you see how watery that is? But we can try this on our stamps. Yes, it's watery, it's not like an ink pad, but it doesn't matter, does it? We're just playing, we're just having a go. So let's tip some of this water away. Now, when I'm playing, it's always what if, so can I just add it to the stamp? Or is this going to be too watery? So then I'm going to add, let's add something up here, like so. Now, who would have thought that the watercolour would be so good, so vibrant? Right, so let's just clean our acrylic block, because Tracy's got everything but the kitchen sink over this. Where's that? Is that on the back yet? My acrylic block's in a little bit of a mess because I'm just enjoying myself too much. So now, have I got another piece of watercolour? Not watercolour, foam. Let me see if I've got another piece. Let me grab another piece of this foam. You can't get the cut and dry foam anymore, that's discontinued, and that's why I'm saying use a sponge or whatever. So what I've got now, so let's bring this card, and you can see it's a background. Now, what you have to ask yourself is, if I didn't do this and test things, you never know. And that's why it's important you ask yourself, what if? And you can see I'm just creating a background because I'm going to have something on the foreground anyway, so it doesn't matter. So now I'm going to pick up this white. So I'm picking up this white watercolour and I'm just touching the white watercolour on the surface. And let's see if we can add a white one here. So just using that white watercolour. Can you see? And you can see that quite clearly, the white watercolour. And it just gives me the white in the background. So from that, I would say the watercolour is a better option to add the white on the top. So it's always worth testing. Obviously, you don't have to add the white. So what you've learned from this is, if you want to create a background just with your inks, you can use your inks. And also what you have to remember from your creating is that not everything is going to be perfect. So we can pick up this, can't we? We're not going to waste this. So let's pick up a little bit of this and we'll add some of that white to the background. So from all that, the watercolour gave the best white-ish image. But, oh, I've got that much stuff everywhere. It's not detrimental because we were just playing. So just placing my watercolours back again, just so that the watercolours are not lying around. So there's another way you could have also done it. You could have used your stamping platform, which I didn't want to do because I wanted it to be a bit more natural. And you could have used your white ink pad or your white paint and gone over and over and over. But I wanted it white, but sort of see-through so that you can still see everything else in that layered element. So let's give this a dry. Just a lovely background. There we go. So what I'm going to do then is grab the stamp, and then we're going to grab a spare piece of, look at this background, the second generation. Just lovely, the second generation background. Really lovely. So I'm going to grab, she says confidently, a spare piece of white card, which just evades me. There we go. And now we're going to add these florals on the top. So I'm going to take, I think we'll take Twisted Citron because I just want a light colour. So let's just take Twisted Citron. I only just want to make the image. Now, if I'd created a painted backdrop, so if I'd created this background here without inks and created it with paint, the white paint would go over the top easily, no problem at all. The only reason it doesn't here is the paint reacts with the oxides. There we go. So I've got a nice light colour on there. Let's just give this a wipe with that so that oxide isn't lying there. And then I'm going to colour this. So I'm going to use dark green 908, and I'm quite enjoying my colouring at the moment. So I'm going to just add a little bit of the green. So I'm just using the dark green. Just to add the dark green. And let's add a little bit of the dark green down the stem. There we go. Then I'm going to use Spring Green 913. And again, I'm just coming in very lightly with the colours. So that spring green is going into the dark green. Obviously, I've got a problem with the middle one. I didn't even do that. So let's come in with that dark green. Then the spring green. And then we'll use a little bit of chartreuse to come into all the other colours. A little bit of chartreuse. 989. So the spring green was 913. And then I'm going to use Pale Sage 1089. Would help if with the light I could actually see. So I'm just coming in. Now at the moment, that's just patchy. So we'll come in and add some more layers of colour. So we'll just come in with another layer of the dark green. So just coming in with another layer of that dark green. And just taking my time just to layer those colours. So just having a little bit of fun with the colouring. We'll then come to our chartreuse. There we go. And then we'll come to the Pale Sage. There we go. So again, I'm going to repeat that. And I'm now going to, and that's no good. I need it sharpening. So let me just sharpen that. There we go. It's much better. When you've got a sharp pencil, it really does work a little bit better. So I'm just going to add a little bit of a dark edge now, just to give a little bit more definition. So I'm just going to come in with a little bit more of that dark green. Just bringing a little bit more definition in there. And if you just apply your colour lightly each time, just so that you can layer that really beautifully by just adding lighter layers of your colour. Tiny little bit of chartreuse. And then we'll come to the sage, pale sage, which will come in, and you can, I'm going to blend into all the colours with a little bit of that sage. And then I'm going to cut that out to add to my project. So let's take I'm going to cut this out with a little bit of a white border. If you want to, and you don't want to cut the stem out, just cut the florals out and draw a stem. You can easily add a white touch to the stem, no problem at all. So let's cut the excess card out, just because I can work a little bit easier personally with less card. Again, it's not difficult to cut out. It's only the stem that you might find a little bit fiddly. But I do want ones that are cut out. I just think it adds to the design personally. We've got a little bit too much white there. Did I go up there? You did. So we can add this on the top then, and that just gives some beautiful dimension. And then, doesn't it look nice like that, just remaining in the card? And as you cut down the stem, your card will begin to curl. There we go. So you just have to convince the floral which way that is going. You see, and we can, that's why it doesn't matter in your background, because this is what's in the foreground, so in the background is the background, so it works quite nicely. I'm then going to cut another one out, but we're going to stamp it in black. So let's take the Nocturne Black. And you can see it's a silhouette stamp, so it's just important to add plenty of ink, particularly because you've got that silhouette stamp. And it's more about just giving that time just to rest onto the surface of the card. That's the most important thing. And then 9 times out of 10, you get a perfect impression. There we go. Got an itchy eye. So then I'm going to cut this out. Now, if you're going to place your fingers all over the florals, then blot this and give it a little bit of a waft dry, because the ink, believe it or not, will still be wet, even though you've gone onto a surface, and it, you know, it is porous to some degree. You just need to keep your fingers off there until that is fully dry. There you go. So all I've done is add layers with this floral. So obviously the black will be the bold image. And I'm cutting up into the petals just so that they are loose, and it just gives a little bit more movement and dimension. There we go. And again, as you cut into, move that out of the way, as you cut down the stem, the card will start to curl. The actual stem. That's it. Lovely, lovely. Oh, can't pick it up. Just straighten that out so we know which is going where. So I'm just going to faff now. That's how it's going to go. Lovely. So I'm going to take my adhesive. That's it. Don't know what was taking me so long then. So I'm going to take some adhesive and just add this down the stem and at the top of the floral, so that all the floral isn't stuck down, if that makes sense. So what you've got is you've got the stem stuck down and part of the top of the floral, so that this here is loose. It's just the top that is stuck down. So it's just the top that you're sticking down. There we go. Then we'll take the lovely green one and we'll just come down. A little bit of a blob there, and leaving those petals free. Maybe as can you come up? Honestly, yes, you can faff. I often faff. Just stick that down at the top there. So just make sure that your stem is stuck down, just so that you've then got that. But with the petals being loose, it just gives that a little bit more life rather than being stuck flat down. I'm then going to take, so first of all, let's put this stamp back. Let's just place that back. And then I'm going to grab TE45 because it's got that text stamp on there. So I'm going to take that text stamp and I'm going to add a little bit of black stamping, but only a little bit, just in touches everywhere, so that we've got the black here and we want to bring that into the background. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So I'm holding that stamp and curling it a little bit, just so that we can add a little touch of the stamping. And it just brings that to life a little bit, and it looks a little bit more considered. So let's just give that a wipe because that ink is soaking wet. Let me grab the stamp and place that back. Okie dokie. And you can see the black stamping here and dotted around just brings this in as well. We then want to add a little bit of shading to our stem of the ones that are in the foreground. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the florals that are in the foreground. So let's grab a fine brush, a little bit of water. So let's grab a little bit of water. I don't think I've got plain water. There you go. And let's just add a little bit of shading to the stem. Just to these little touches here. So just adding it to the stems there. There we go. Just so you can you see the, yes you can see the shading now on there. So I'm then going to take my micron pen and then I'm just going to sort of squiggle around the actual card, because you've got a squiggly edge, so just follow that squiggly edge around the base there. So just, it's not perfect because you're adding a squiggly edge, just so that it's got a little more definition. Then I'm going to take, what does that one say? When nothing else works, create art. Isn't that just the truth? There we go. So, or, yes, I'm going to use this one, which is, oh, I was going to say I haven't got any card. So let's grab the card. And this is a very fine sentiment. So it doesn't take much ink at all. And it says, when nothing else works, create art. Isn't that the truth? just clean your hands. And then let's cut this out. There we go. Biggest scissors ever to cut my sentiment. And even with your sentiment, you need to not put your hands on the project. And I'm then going to add this here to cover my markup that I had my little bit of a fingerprint on there, because I didn't wipe my fingers, and that's why I always say to you, wipe your fingers. So I'm just going to add this here, and then I'm going to add something to the bottom corner here to balance that out. So give that time just to work on there. And then I want my bird. Where are you? TE44. Where are you? There you are. Is that, no, that's not T44. Why is the one you always want never the first one you come to? There it is. So I want TE44, a myriad of designs. I've got my, let's put these at the back. I've got some cut out bits and masks. As you can see, a mask here, but I'm going to use the little bird. So that's why I always sort of go on about clean your fingers, because it's easy to leave a mark on there. Even clean your acrylic block. So I'm then going to add this down here, just come out a bit. There we go. That's it. So now that balances out my text. You know, you have to, it has to be thought out, considered. I don't like to just plonk something for the sake of plonking it on there. So then I can add a little bit of shading under here, a little bit of shading for our bird. Take a little bit of water. There we go, a little bit of shading for the bird, just so that it's not sitting on there the whole time. The whole time. Right, and then we're going to add our matte, a little bit of matting and layering, but first of all, I need my blending brush. So I need a green. So I've got my blending brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of the pine needles. So we'll take a little bit of our pine needles, and I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of the pine needles just around our outer edge. And if something's not working for you, you can either walk away or just ask yourself, what if I tried this or I tried that? There's somebody at my door, just bear with me. I do apologise, everybody. It was somebody to do with sales, and I'm expecting a delivery and there's only me in. So I do apologise. So if you have a project or it's not going quite to plan, you can walk away or ask yourself, how can I learn from this? And we all do it. It isn't perfect every time. Like me, putting a fingerprint on the card. That doesn't mean it has to go in the bin. There we go. So now I want to add some Posca pen. I'm going to keep that Posca pen away from the sentiment. And you can see that it doesn't matter that I experimented with the background. It doesn't matter one bit, because it just goes with the overall effect. So it doesn't matter that I experimented a little bit. So all we need now is we just need some bleed proof white. So let's take some bleed proof white. You can reactivate what's in the lid. So if you've got this in a paint palette, you can reactivate that. Let's bring that brush back to a point. And then I'm just going to add a few little touches of white. Just to the project. So just take your time and add a few pieces of white. Doesn't have to be too much, just little bits, and just to the focal image, I would say. Just adding a little bit more, and I'm using a fine brush. Fine brush just makes that a little bit easier for you. There we go. Just a few. That's it. Clean them brushes afterwards. We're then going to add that to a 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 true black card, because that'll pick up the black. That will pick up the black on our floral. So let's just pick this up. Just make sure that's in the right place. Still got white paint all over my hand. Now don't forget to press in the middle, just so that you've not got little bubbles within your project. Oh, there's somebody near the door again. So let's just, doesn't the black mat make a big difference? Then I'm going to add that to a 5 by 7 card blank. Like so. I do think it works so well when you mat and layer something. There we go. And when it's matted and layered, that just finishes it off really nicely. You can just see that you've got lots of layers. I love how you've got these colours. Just wonderful. You've got a little bit of sheen from the Lindy's as well. Just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So I love that. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And like they say, when nothing else works, create art. and I'll leave that with you. So I can't wait to see your interpretations. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.